to stop and smell the flowers, if you like to climb the trees.
Hello and welcome. I have been tagged on Instagram to take part in the Seamstress tag. Now, for those of you who don't know what the Seamstress tag is, there is a lovely, relatively new vlogger out there on the sewing scene, a fellow socialist, and she is called Hollie, and she has a vlog on YouTube called Hollie Sews. Now, Hollie realised that there were no tags for us seamstresses, so she decided that she would start the Seamstress tag. And basically what that means is there is a list of 12 questions that us seamstresses have to answer and tell you a little bit about us and what we do and who we are. And at the end of it, we then tag some other seamstresses that we know, and they have to go off and film the same vlog. So it's a really good idea, and it does mean if you're looking for some new podcasts or new vlogs to follow, then you can just go onto YouTube and put in the Seamstress tag and you will get loads. There's lots and lots of people that have done this, including some of the really well-known vloggers, and I know that Lisa Comfort from Sew Over is planning on doing hers this week, and she was tagged by Hollie Sews. There are quite a few other very well-known sewers who have also done it too. So I'm going to get started. Okay, so question number 1 is, who are you? So I'm Claire and I run Beautiful Things, which is a craft and sewing studio in Brentwood in Essex. So I teach all of our sewing classes and all of our crochet classes and craft classes, and we have a very busy studio. In my spare time, I try and make as much of my own wardrobe as I possibly can, and I vlog about it on this channel. So you can see the things that I make. I also run a fabric haul video that I do, so whenever I acquire new fabrics, and I commit my plans to my video, because that way it makes me make sure that I do actually get them done and I don't just build up a pile of fabric. So question number 2 was, when and why did you start sewing? I started sewing about 9 years ago. I just had my son and I was at home for a year on maternity leave, and I at the time made lots and lots of handmade cards, and the fashion for cards was to sew on them with a sewing machine. So I asked my mum to buy me a sewing machine for Christmas, and I just wanted one of those tiny little mini machines because all I was going to do was sew on cardboard. But as it was, she bought me a John Lewis mini in pistachio green, and my love of sewing started there because I soon realised I could make far more than just sewing on cards. So that's obviously progressed quite considerably over the last years or so. So my favourite or proudest make is question number 3. I think my proudest make has got to be my bias cut chevron cocoa. Although it's a very, very simple dress to make, it was really, really hard matching all those chevrons, cutting it all out on the bias and getting it 100% perfect. So I am really, really proud of that. I'm also particularly proud of the very first dress that I properly made that actually took me about 3 weeks, and it was a Colette pattern vintage wrap dress, like a vintage tea dress, and it's really lovely. I made it out of an old Laura Ashley flowery curtain, and I did wear it to a tea party, and I absolutely love it, mainly because it was the first thing that I followed 100% by myself with no help, from start to finish, and it did fit and it did look really nice. So that's probably the other thing that I'm particularly proud of. So I'm just reading the questions. The next question is, what is your most disastrous make? Well, that probably has to be the very first dress that I made from the first Sewing Bee book. The first book wasn't produced and published by the same people that produce them now, and it was pretty badly written. It did get some pretty bad reviews. The patterns didn't fit properly, and for anybody who was a brand new sewer, it just wasn't going to work for you because too many tweaks needed to be made. I think it was fine for those people that had already done some dressmaking because they could see the errors straight away. and they were aware of their body shape and their sizing, etc. So they didn't fall into the grand pitfalls. But I made a horrible dress. It was, the top was a like orangey colour upholstery fabric, I think. And the bottom, again, was like a flowery bed sheet. The bodice sat right up underneath my boobs, pretty much where the underwire of my bra went. And then it all clung around the tummy. The zip didn't do up properly. It was disastrous. It was awful. I was very proud of it at the time, but it didn't fit. I think the other one that probably was pretty disastrous is I decided to try the Sew Over It Ultimate Shift, which is such a simple pattern, but I really was being ridiculous, and I cut it out of an old bed sheet. I didn't cut in any of the notches or anything, and so therefore ended up putting the sleeves in back to front. So when I tried the dress on, my arms did this instead of this, and it was so horrible, and the sheet was so vile that I just screwed it up and threw it away. But we all have to learn. The next question is, where is your favourite place to go fabric shopping? I think that's got to be the Goldhawk Road. I only discovered that this year, but it is lots and lots of fun. I love going in the shops. There's such a mishmash of various different textures and colours and types of fabric. It is really good fun. I like going there for the day. The other fabric shop that I really like, mainly because it has a really good stock of knit fabrics and really nice quality jerseys, is the Sewing Machine World, and that is in Tunbridge Wells. And again, you have to make a special trip to go there, but that's a really nice shop if you're looking for knits and jersey fabrics. So the next question is, what is your most used pattern? Well, I have two. I cannot count how many times I've made these outfits. The first one is the Emery dress by Christina Hayes. I have made this probably 10 times. I absolutely love it. It's very, very flattering. It's my go-to dress pattern if I just want something simple, and if I find a really fun, amazing quilting cotton that I really want to stand out, then I always use this pattern because it really does show off the fabric. The other one is my Tilly and the Buttons Cocoa pattern, which I really, really love. I've made this probably 15, 20 times, and I do promise you that I will film a cocoa video of all of my cocos and just go into this pattern in a little bit more detail, because I know lots of you have asked me. So, question 7 is, what is your most dreaded sewing task? And that is so easy. It's hand sewing hems. I hate hand sewing with a passion. So whether it's hems or, oops, sorry, it's not the camera. Whether it's hems or the back of the zips, I can't stand it. And I do avoid patterns that need hand sewing, although there are some that just simply have to. So the Ultimate Pencil Skirt, for instance, that just looks really, really lovely. It has a big hem on the bottom of it. You do have to hand sew it, but it's well worth it in the end. I have got a pair of palazzo pants that I made from the Sewing Bee book, and they are next to me in my little cart here. They're finished, but they just need to be hand sewn, and they've been sitting there, I think, for about 6 or 7 weeks, but I really must get round to doing that. So my favourite sewing task is question number 8, and that is easy as well. I absolutely love gathering. I don't know why, but I find it really, really therapeutic. Just sewing the long, long gathering stitches on my sewing machine, pinning my bodice to my skirt, and then spending the time getting those gathers really lovely, evenly placed, and popping lots and lots and lots and lots of pins in. I really enjoy putting them in place, and then once they're sewn, I love nothing more than the challenge of pulling that gathering thread out all in one go so that it doesn't snap. Even if I've lined my bodice and I know that my bodice is going to come down and cover that join line, I still pull those threads out because I really enjoy doing it. So that's my favourite task. Favourite sewing entertainment? Normally I am sewing at work, in which case we normally have some music on. We like to listen to playlists on Spotify so that they just play all day and we don't have to worry about changing the music. And we tend to go for either some sort of French jazz, or we put a bit of 1950s swing on, just something that's a little bit light-hearted. You haven't really got to concentrate on the words, you're not tempted to sing along, which is a dangerous one for me. I think all my pupils would run and hide. So yeah, a bit of something easy listening normally is on the cards, unless I'm in the studio on my own, and then I do tend to put on probably a bit of up-to-date dance music or house music. Try not to put it on too loud to annoy my neighbours. At home of an evening, if I'm sewing, then I may well watch a podcast on my laptop, but I do struggle if I'm sewing because sometimes the sewing machine is louder than the podcast. So question number 10 is printed or PDF. That's easy, printed all the way. I hate PDF patterns. I really, really do. I was absolutely gutted when Sew Over It brought out their City Break book as an ebook. I would have paid twice the amount of money for it as a printed copy, with all the patterns in the back. Granted, I would have traced them off still. I don't very often cut out my printed patterns. I do trace them off because I like to keep them intact. And that is a fiddly task, but there's nothing worse than sticking endless pieces of paper together, and also it uses an awful lot of printer ink, which, bearing in mind I have a little inkjet printer, really isn't an option for me. So if I do a PDF pattern, I tend to take it to the local print shop and get them to print it for me, so that I don't have to use all my inkjet ink. So which sewing machine do I use? I've got two machines. My machine at home is a Janome DSK 100, which is a really lovely computerised sewing machine. It's actually the same machine that Tilly Buttons uses in all of her workshops, and I wanted one for a very long time, so I treated myself to one earlier this year. At work, because we are a Janome sewing centre, we lease all of our machines, and therefore we're a little bit limited as to what we can use. If I could, I would use the DSK 100 in classes, but they're not on the list. So we use the CXL 301, which is a really nice computerised machine. It's great. It's got a fast and slow function, which is really handy when I'm teaching children or anyone that's a little bit nervous about sewing, because they can go really, really slowly. The only thing that I really miss when I'm sewing at the studio is the cut button. When you get quite used to it, it really makes your sewing really, really quick to just be able to cut your threads and carry on stitching. So when I'm at work and I'm sewing for myself, I do find it a little bit tedious having to either use the thread cutter or grab some scissors to snip that thread. But that's just me being a sewing machine snob. I've been spoilt, unfortunately, with a more high-end machine. So the last question is, do you have any other hobbies? And yes, I do. Obviously, I'm super crafty. I love to crochet. I'm learning to knit at the moment, and I like crafts in general. But aside from that, I love eating out. I like going to really nice restaurants and trying new foods. And I like to enjoy the wine that comes with those foods. And I'm also a big gin fan. So I have a small gin collection that is building at the moment, and I like to try lots of artisan gins, so lots of the independent gin makers and gin producers. As well as, obviously, if I'm out and about in the local pub, then a Bombay Sapphire is probably my gin of choice from the high street. So that is the Seamstress tag. I've answered all 12 questions, and I am now going to tag Katie from inside number 23, and I'm also going to tag Nancy from the Round Rabbit podcast. So hopefully both of you will enjoy doing the Seamstress tag, and we'll carry on the trend. So that's me for now. I will catch you later. Bye bye.
If you like to stop and smell the flowers,